Assalamu alaikum. In this video, I'm going to be reading out 4 different messages from 4 different women. So the introduction of this video is going to be quite long because I'm going to be reading out these messages. The messages are related to these women being in marriages where their husband consumes porn. They sent me these messages through a form that I have. If you have questions for me that you would like a chance for me to answer for free in upcoming videos, the link to the form is in the description box below. I'm going to read out the messages, so as mentioned, it is going to be a little bit long to start with. At the end, once I finish reading out the messages, I will be sharing my advice. So the first message is, I really need some advice, please. We've been married for 5 years, alhamdulillah. When we first got married, I noticed my husband would look at women from wrestling. He had been watching wrestling for a long time before. I noticed when we first got married, a friend of my husband would send images of women to my husband from wrestling. I noticed this and mentioned it to my husband, and it had stopped for a while. I did keep checking his phone privately without him knowing to see if it had stopped. Then I noticed porn tabs open on his phone. I went to check something on his phone and I'd seen it open. This was not even a year that we'd been married. He said it didn't mean anything and he didn't do anything. I was distraught and very upset. He kept saying it didn't mean anything and he didn't pleasure himself. Now we've been married 5 years. We have 2 young daughters. Our intimacy is good generally, like mostly every week or sometimes 2 weeks. We have become more comfortable and confident with each other. We have had some times in the 5 years we haven't done it for over a month, etc. I do still notice his behavior. So many times I have noticed, like I know for sure, he still watches porn. I have said it to him so many times. He has denied it, made excuses, uses the I had a wet dream excuse. So many times we have spoken about it, and I got him to make a promise. I know it's been broken so many times. I noticed porn tabs open on his phone when I went to stay at my parents' house. I came back, had the chance privately to check his phone, and I knew it. He watched porn while I was at my parents' for 2 nights. When I brought it up, I was so upset. He didn't even say anything, just ignored my cries, told me to shut up, and that was it. But it's hurt me so much at that time, and I remember that time, and so many times I know he has done something. I'm just getting frustrated and upset. I can't keep saying it to him. He gets frustrated with me and gets in a mood with me, as I know he's lying but makes excuses. But what do? I really would appreciate any advice and ways to talk to him. He won't accept outside help from a therapist. I said it once and it was a blatant no. I'm like a detective at home. I check his pants. I ask why there are wet pants in the wash basket. He will usually say he had a wet dream, which I don't think is always the case. He is more careful now and doesn't leave tabs open on his phone. But his behavior, like if he doesn't pray, has showers randomly, wet pants in the wash, etc., I know he has done something. There has been times he had links to porn saved in his notes, and I checked and I deleted the note. He'd seen this and said to me, I was testing you to see if you see it, what will you do? I was like, but why is it saved? He has obviously watched it and copied the link and saved it in his notes. Other times when I've gone out shopping for an hour, he has changed his pants. He usually wears a different pair at night and clean ones during the day as he prays. So recently one day when I went shopping, I noticed he changed into his nighttime pants, and when I realized he was in the same room as he works from home, but when he went downstairs, I went to the room, I noticed the pants. I'm getting a little bit confused from the message because there's a lot going on, but I'm just trying to read it as best as I can. I realized that he was in the same room as he works from home, but when he went downstairs, I went into the room. I noticed the pants were wet and dirty, like discharge on them. He then got some clean pants from the drawer and wore them. Not his usual daytime ones that he prays in. I said this to him, that I noticed your pants were wet, and he said no, they weren't. The same pants then were wet in the wash basket later in the evening as he had football that day. I said this to him. He said, so what? He said he didn't do anything, and that same day he didn't pray in the evening because I knew he couldn't. He had football the same day too. This is a very long message, probably doesn't make much sense, but I just need advice on how to get to the bottom of it. Like, I know every single time I've stayed at my parents' house in the last 5 years, I know he's watched porn and done something, because when I come home, there are always wet pants in the wash and he rarely has wet dreams. I actually haven't stayed at my parents' house in a long time because I know what he will do and I don't trust him. Please help. Any advice would be so much appreciated. So that was a long message from one woman. I am going to read the 3 other messages. As I mentioned, there's 4 messages. And the reason I share these messages is to highlight the impact on the marriage, the impact when, in this context, it's the husband who's consuming porn and it's impacting the wife. It's obviously also impacting the husband too. But I share these messages because these are real situations. The next message is, I've been married for a year and have a beautiful daughter, mashallah. My husband never makes love. He always has to do some kind of role play or imagine another woman being there and talk about it during sex. He likes anal sex, but I refuse to have it, so he talks about doing sexual things to other women's private parts. He has a porn addiction, as I have seen it in his history many times, but I've recently come across him paying for OnlyFans. I feel so betrayed and somewhat cheated. I cannot take this anymore. He very rarely satisfies me in bed, but always wants me to go above and beyond when he wants sex. I do not feel like I can trust him anymore, and I am especially hurt that he has been paying for OnlyFans. Since discovering this, I feel disgusted to be in the same room as him, so I have moved back to my mum's. Please help, I feel so lost. The next message, Assalamu alaikum. I've been married for a year. My husband is 20 and I'm 21. We don't live together currently and still live at our parents' home. Months into our marriage, I noticed my husband does not lower his gaze. And I, in an argument, found out he has a porn addiction from his childhood. This has now deeply affected our relationship and how I see him. I asked him this question during our marriage meetings, but he didn't think it would cause an issue as he didn't indulge then, but it did as I noticed his behavior. We've been having conflict ever since, and I simply do not trust him when we're outside or he's alone, that he lowers his gaze, and I struggle with intimacy as it is, but this has made it even worse. We've never had full penetrative intercourse due to my vaginismus, and I just simply don't feel like it because of the issues we have due to his addiction and him hiding it from me. I told him to be open with me and speak to me when he has urges or a feeling, but he's never stuck to this due to shame. We have divorced once because from an argument and anger 6 months into our marriage because I found out of the addiction. I'm assuming this person is saying that they've been divorced once, but they got remarried, so they're currently married. I need advice because this has truly ruined me in many ways. Porn destroys lives, and I would have never married him if he was truthful when I initially asked him this question, because I knew the damage this would have caused and the damage it causes to a person. He tells me he feels urges by women he sees outside from day to day, but this is because of this subconscious over-sexualization due to his porn addiction, and it is simply not normal to feel like this just by passing by other women, even covered Muslim women. It's not normal, and I have had a huge betrayal of trust. He does not initiate, I'm not sure what that means, sentimental, emotional intimacy, and he is an avoidant individual, and I'm anxious attachment. The point I'm trying to figure out is, what do? I don't reach out to family because this is too intimate and embarrassing to talk about. I don't know if this marriage is worth being in, and I've even been suicidal at one point because of the stress this has caused me. I'm now numb to this, but deep down I am truly broken and I can't feel like I can fully heal with this burden. He hasn't sought help for himself because he's embarrassed, and I'm just sick of it. I'm not being pleased emotionally, and I was simply lied to, and I don't trust him to even lower his gaze, so what's the point? It stops me from getting better as an individual because it's always on my mind. So what do I do? How can I navigate this? I've done istikhara, but I still don't know what is the right thing to do. I don't know what to do. I have no one to speak to about this. The final message is, Salam Amira. I asked you for advice in the past regarding how my husband refuses intimacy for over a year and keeps making excuses each time. I found out it is due to his porn consumption, and he has now finally agreed for us to do marriage counselling. Who would you recommend that is Islamic, faith-based and will effectively work? My husband is afraid of it being a waste of money if it doesn't work. I am afraid of not getting marriage counselling as I feel our intimacy is so poor and lacking thereof massively that this issue cannot be solved internally anymore without some form of professional help. Please let me know who would be on the affordable side. This lack of intimacy is seriously draining me. I feel like I'm nagging my husband about it constantly, but honestly, it's been too long now. I'm still a young woman and just want to have my needs satisfied. Okay, so my advice, if any woman finds out that her husband is consuming porn, the first step is to speak to him about it. And you need to have boundaries put in place where you state to him that I know that you're consuming porn and it's really affecting me in this marriage, me as the wife in this marriage. It's affecting me. Your consumption of porn is affecting me and is also affecting you. It's affecting the both of us. The boundary that you as a woman need to put in place is, first step, communicate. Not in a way where you are being not in a way where you're being overly critical and negative and like shaming and blaming, because that doesn't work, but in a way where you are having open communication in an adult way, okay? Have that communication with him and state to him that I need you to seek professional help. That's the first step, okay? And a few people have mentioned, a few of the messages mentioned that they've already done that. And you can even suggest, I know of these organizations that help people. I'm actually going to link 2 organizations. One is called Purify Your Gaze. The other one is called My Tazkiyah. And then there's another community page. It's like a membership for men, a community membership for Muslim men that was set up by a brother that I found on YouTube. I will also link his page. His page is, I believe, called Low Gaze. I'm going to provide links to those places in the description box below. One person's even asking for a marriage counsellor who is on the affordable side. I don't know how to determine whether something is affordable or not. The marriage counsellor that I recommend is someone called Qasim Rafiq. I'm going to also provide his website in the description below. If he's not affordable for you, you're going to need to do your own research and find someone. But you asked for my recommendation, and so that's the person that I recommend. As I mentioned, I will provide his website in the description below. So that's step 1, communicate and put a boundary in place and state that the person consuming porn, in this context, the husband is consuming porn. He needs to seek professional help. And if you believe it would be helpful, which I think can be helpful in some cases, what I'm about to say, give a sort of date, a deadline. What I mean by that is not necessarily a deadline by which he needs to stop consuming porn, but more of a deadline where you're like, okay, in the next month, I want to see that you've taken the following action steps, such as gone on the websites that I've shared, booked an appointment or booked the program or joined the course provided by those organizations, or reached out to that marriage counselor. That's one of the steps. And then I want to see that within the next month you've set up your first appointment, or I want to see that you're actively consuming the content provided by those organizations. Put that boundary in place. And then you also need to state, if I see that this condition hasn't been met, then you as the woman state to your husband, then I know it is perfectly within my right to go and seek a divorce. Because what's happening here is porn is a form of zina. It's a form of, why do I say zina? Because zina isn't just about engaging in sexual intimacy with a person or just sex with a person. That's not it. There are other things that come under the category of zina, such as zina of the eyes, intentionally and consistently choosing to look at sexual acts, i.e. through porn, is a form of zina. It comes under the category of zina. And your husband committing zina in that way through porn is the perfectly legitimate grounds for you to seek divorce, especially if the husband does not want to seek professional help to overcome his porn consumption, to stop his porn consumption. Okay, so you as a woman don't need to just stay stuck in a marriage, because I've seen the common theme is, what shall I do? Please help. I am telling you, this is what you need to do. If you've already communicated and your husband is adamant that he doesn't want to work with a professional, he doesn't want to join a program, then there are clear steps that you can take. And any scholar or sheikh who is upon the deen properly and isn't misogynistic, okay, and isn't just going to be like, oh, that's just a man's nature, because that's not Islam. You know, if you consult with a scholar and if you are not happy with what the first scholar says to you, if the scholar says, oh no, you just stay in the marriage, no. If your husband doesn't want to take steps to overcome it, find a sheikh or a scholar that will help you with going for a divorce. Now, I'm not saying this because I'm not a type of person who just throws the word divorce around for no reason, but this is a serious issue, because in a lot of the situations that I've read through the messages, there are kids involved. Now, the porn consumption, like let's say the man was single, he wasn't married and he didn't have kids. A single man consuming porn, that is something that affects his mental health, his spiritual health. But because he's not married and doesn't have kids, that is his mental health and spiritual health, or the impact on his mental and spiritual health isn't going to affect a wife or kids, because he doesn't have a wife or kids. But now in the context of a marriage, there is another person involved, the wife, and then sometimes there are kids involved. The way the man is impacts the wife and also is going to impact the children too. So this is serious, okay? So you communicate, you put the boundaries in place, state that he, the husband, must seek help. It is not your duty as the wife to save him. It is your duty as the wife to communicate it with him and to put a boundary in place. And if the boundary is not met, then you take steps to move forward. So this doesn't need to be so complicated. So many women tell me like, oh, I'm staying in the marriage because, you know, he's the sole provider and I don't have a means to financially provide for myself or the kids. Your husband is not the only way for you to receive money from Allah, because it's actually Allah who is the ultimate provider. And right now, temporarily, and this dunya is temporary anyways, but right now in this moment in time, let's say you're in a marriage and let's say you're not working, or you are working but you feel like your income isn't enough to provide for you and the kids, and you rely on your husband's income, and so that's one reason you're staying in the marriage, is for that. Right now, your husband is a temporary means for you to receive provision from Allah. And if you were to go through a divorce, your husband would no longer be that means of provision from Allah, but Allah doesn't need you to be married to your husband in order for Allah to send provision to you. Allah can send provision to you with the means and without the means, through other means, okay? And that comes from trust in Allah, tawakkul in Allah. It's so important. So turn to Allah, make dua. You can make dua for your husband as well. Ya Allah, please help my husband to overcome his porn consumption. But at the end of the day, your husband needs to want it for himself. So if you don't see him taking steps to making changes and taking steps to overcome his porn consumption, then you need to move forward with what I just said. And I'm not someone, as I've mentioned already, I'm not here saying divorce is something just to throw around, but this is a serious situation, okay? So please take it seriously. Now, there are a few of the messages were mentioning things like the woman's needs are not met because the husband is either not interested in intimacy, is not satisfying his wife sexually, because the husband is satisfying himself through things like porn. And so the wife has real sexual needs and those needs are not being fulfilled. And that is actually something so important to know in Islam. In Islam, there is a huge, high importance of the husband's duty to satisfy his wife sexually. And so that is even further legitimate grounds for divorce, okay? And it was something that at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he allowed divorce to happen when the woman wasn't sexually satisfied in the marriage. And so you've got further grounds, legitimate grounds for divorce. So please know that you don't need to stay stuck in this type of marriage. A lot of the messages I read had elements of toxicity in the marriage, where the husband is either gaslighting or, just being like, is completely disregarding his own sin, completely disregarding the effects of his behavior on his wife and on his children. And so you as a woman should not stay in a marriage like that if the husband doesn't want to receive help. On the other hand, if the husband is admitting that he is struggling with porn consumption and he acknowledges that he needs to receive professional help, and he shows a willingness to receive professional help, and you start to see him taking those steps to getting the help, then that would be a positive sign to stay in the marriage, to see how things turn out. And again, continue to make dua and see if he is willing to get help and he takes the steps to overcome it, to overcome his porn consumption, then inshallah stay in the marriage, see how things turn out. And if he overcomes his porn consumption and he makes amends for his behavior, especially any negative things that might have happened in the marriage because of his porn consumption, he needs to make amends, he needs to seek forgiveness from Allah, seek forgiveness from his wife too, then inshallah stay in that marriage. But if he's not willing to get help, then why do you need to be willing to stay in that type of marriage? You don't need to be willing to stay in that type of marriage. May Allah help you, may Allah guide you, may Allah make this process, whatever happens next in your life, for you and any kids in the marriage, may Allah make it easy for you. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.